Check this out. My top 10 80s South African bubblegum era music. My name is Fairchild and you are watching Cross Rhythm. Hi guys, how you been? Long time. So for those of you who don't know what bubblegum music is, I'm going to define it for you guys. Bubblegum music was a music that came out of South Africa in the 80s during the apartheid era. It was a mix of vocals mixed with keyboards and synthesizers. They also took other traditional genres that were present in South Africa at the time. So mbaqanga and kwela, for example. So that's bubblegum music. Let's get right into it. At number 10, I have Ayachisa Mategi by Mercy Pakela, the Queen of Pansula, or Donkey Donkey, as some people refer to her as that name. I'm not quite sure how she got that name. You know you have a hit on your hands when till this day, people still are very familiar with that phrase, Ayachisa Mategi. The song is talking about having shoes that are too tight. Mercy Pakela started when she was 16 years of age. She hasn't slowed down since, and I watched a couple of interviews and she stated that she's still ready and will continue to make music as long as there's someone out there who will listen. So that's my number 10, Ayachisa Mategi by Mercy Pakela. At number 9, I have Take Your Love by Steve Kekana. Legendary artist Steve Kekana lost his sight at the early age of 5. I remember as a kid we had a Steve Kekana record growing up at home. Take Your Love, this is a dancehall inspired record that does mix different African elements in it. You do have the keyboard, the synthesizer, which is what makes this a bubblegum track. He has been jokingly referred to as Africa's own Stevie Wonder. Stevie Wonder is an influence of Steve Kekana. He has cited this. Today, Steve Kekana earned a degree in law. He is a practicing lawyer currently. In interviews that I did watch, he did state that he is still performing, he still is touring, but he also is a lawyer at the same time. My number 9, Eva Orlando. Eva Orlando. Monwa Bisi Yekani and San Kotse. Monwa and Son, my number 8. So this is a South African classic. Orlando Hangover. It's a very funny song, actually, when you listen to it and you watch the video. It's talking about a man who has a hangover. He comes into his house, he's talking to his woman, and he's asking her for help because he has this huge hangover. They go to a clinic in the video, and he's also asking the nurse for help because he has a hangover. This is a very popular song. 2012, we even had DJ Vedcook and DJ Malhuta remake the song. A lot of controversy was surrounded around that remake in regards to whether clearance was given or not to that song. This is a timeless song. It's aged very well. It's a favorite of mine, and it's my number 8. At number 7, I have Peacock, or as the song says, Pikoko. Number 7, this is by Splash. There were a lot of artists during the bubblegum era, and we also had bands, and Splash has to be up there as one of the greatest. Started by Dan Chanda, Peacock was their breakout hit. They went on to have a countless amount of albums. Dan Chanda went on to have a solo career. Dan Chanda put a lot of people on. Through Dan Chanda, we get Dalom Kids. And you know, even though after the 80s bubblegum era, it wasn't as popular, this music, in South Africa because, you know, Kwaito music became the main genre at that point. They continued. A lot of these bubblegum era artists continued to have a lot of success throughout Southern Africa. I grew up in Zimbabwe and I used to hear a lot of Dalom Kids, Dan Chanda. If you ever caught public transportation, the 80's, if you were sitting inside, they were usually playing Splash or Dalom Kids or Dan Chanda. So that's my number 7. My number 6, I have 2 songs actually. I have Burnout and Shigisha by Sipo Hot Sticks, Mabuse. 2 very classic songs. When you think of that whole 80s bubblegum era, Burnout is the soundtrack to that era. It is hard not to hear Burnout and not think of the 80s. Shigisha holds a very sentimental part in my heart. I remember growing up, I would hear Shigisha being played in a lot of homes. So when I heard it, I had a lot of nostalgia attached to it. Both classic songs. I will say Burnout on the second verse. He gets a little forceful. The lyrics get a little forceful there. Tonight, I'm gonna hold you till you cry. Hold you till you cry for more. Tonight, I'm gonna hold you till you cry. Hold you till you cry for more. Ooh, yeah. He was also part of an African funk soul group called Harare. It had a previous name before that. They went to Harare, they had a lot of fun, so they changed their group to Harare. Today, Sipo, not quite sure of the status in terms of performing, but he did go back to school and got a degree in anthropology, which was great. My number 6, Burnout and Shigisha. When you see me walking down the street. Number 5, I have Andi Khelwa by Peter Tennant. Another classic song. Peter Tennant was one of those artists who he was big in the bubblegum era. That's where he started off. But he got even bigger in the 90s, especially in Southern Africa. He had a very nice reach, did a lot of touring out there. I mean, the man even learned Shona in his later life. Peter Tennant had character for days. That's the first thing that stood out. He had a lot of personality on the mic. He opened up the way for a lot of other artists who came after him, like Penny Penny. He did a lot of collaboration with Penny Penny. They were both involved in what they call Shangan music, both giving themselves the title of King of Shangan Disco. Unfortunately, Peter Tennant's career was cut short in 1996 when he got into an altercation with a police officer. Very promising career, cut short. Number 5, Andi Khelwa. Number 4, I have We Miss You, Manelo by Chico. Now, when we are talking about artists who have been very influential in the South African music industry, Chico's one of them. Chico is up there. Singer, songwriter, composer. Chico has written for the best. He's written for Brenda Fosse, Yvonne Chakachaka. His body of work spans through 2 decades. We Miss You, Manelo is a great example of why Chico is so legendary. Now, in the articles that I read, it did say that We Miss You, Manelo is talking about Nelson Mandela. I didn't get that, but when I did go back to the video, because I was really young when that came out, when I did go back and I watched the video, We Miss You, Manelo is talking about a female who falls pregnant and is chased from home, and Chico is looking for her. I'm assuming her name is Manelo. Classic song, my number 4. Number 3, I have Ngizobatola by Rebecca Malope, the queen of African gospel. Rebecca, she needs no introduction. She has this large body of work. I think we're at 32 albums. I'm probably off with that number. Most of them are platinum gospel albums. A lot of people may not know this. Her first album actually was not a gospel album. It was a bubblegum album. She did want to do gospel from the very beginning, but the record label that she signed to wanted her to be competitive with Yvonne and Brenda Fosse and Mercy Pakela, who were really huge acts during the 80s. So she created a bubblegum album, and she did have one gospel song on that album, which turned out to be the most well-received song on the whole album, which kickstarted her whole gospel career. After that, we get gospel albums. Ngizobatola, it's a great song. It's definitely a great song. It has that bubblegum sound that, we were all very familiar with, and it's my number 3. My number 2, Thank You, Mr. DJ by Yvonne Chakachaka. This lady needs no introduction. Yvonne Chakachaka is known throughout Africa. She's nicknamed the Princess of Africa. She has performed with a lot of legendary international artists and local legendary artists. She's performed for dignitaries. Thank You, Mr. DJ. It does sound like a follow-up to her previous song, I'm in Love with the DJ. Both hits. She's had hits throughout the 80s and the 90s. Today, she is a lecturer at the University of South Africa. She's also involved in a lot of philanthropy work. If you're having a bubblegum era list, Yvonne Chakachaka has to be on your list. She's my number 2. Thank You, Mr. DJ by Yvonne Chakachaka. And my number 1, Weekend Special by Brenda Fosse, iconic artist, passed away sadly at the age of 39 in 2004. If there's one artist who's well known across the continent from South Africa, it's Brenda Fosse. There's even a bronze statue of her outside of Baseline. Baseline is a performance venue in South Africa. Her career started off in the 80s and went on into the 2000s with hits in every decade. So versatile. Weekend Special was her bubblegum hit. At the beginning, she did sound a little like Madonna. She was nicknamed Africa's Madonna. But I think once we get into Brenda Fosse in the 90s and the 2000s, she is just creating her own style that is none like any other person. What else can be said about Brenda Fosse? Her music is woven into South Africa's fabric of life. If you've ever lived in Southern Africa and you go to a party or a wedding, a social gathering, you will hear Brenda Fosse's music. That is how iconic she is. Also, my number one, Weekend Special. So there you have it, folks. My top 10 South African bubblegum era songs. What are some of your favorite top 10 South African bubblegum era songs? Remember to like and subscribe, and let's continue the discussion in the comments.